Good afternoon, everyone. So we are seeing lines in the sand being drawn with regards to the conflict the escalating conflict in the Middle East. Most recently, the Qataris have come out and pledged their support for the Lebanese, but we'll come on to that shortly. What I just want to quickly talk about before we get into that is this concept of conventional warfare, because I think it's over. I don't think we're going to see conventional warfare fought ever again. What we found and what history has told us, I mean, you can go all the way back to the American Civil War. When two forces are fighting, the one that adapts guerrilla tactics, asymmetric warfare, non-conventional warfare, the one that adapts that quickest and increases their violence to 10 is usually the winner. Now, I really don't think there's an exception to that looking through history. I mean, I can speak from personal experience of operations in Northern Ireland, of operations in Iraq, of operations in Afghanistan. It's very difficult to take on an enemy that's taken a non-conventional combatant role. We already know that the Iranians specialize in this. We already know that this is how the Lebanese are fighting at the moment. And the Israelis are pushing conventional forces into that region. They're pushing conventional forces into the south, into Gaza. There's also the increased threat from the Syrians. There's the threat from the Iraqis. You know, as we understand, there's been more indirect, well, not recently, but there has been indirect fire launched from Iraq into Israel. And then in the world in general, we have got, and a lot of people are using the term sleeper cells, which I think is fair. A lot of these sleeper cells now could potentially be activated, and these activated sleeper cells could then target politicians, decision makers, financiers, all sorts of stuff. So, it's not as these trying to judge what's going to be the outcome of these military skirmishes, conflicts, because they're never going to be called wars again. Trying to understand what the outcome is going to be. It's not as easy as, okay, my 10 tanks will beat your 5 tanks. It's not that easy. You've got to look at where the fuel comes from the tanks, where the spare parts are, where the ammunition is produced, where do they produce their kit and equipment from. So these supply chains will be targeted, and there's all sorts of stuff on an asymmetric spectrum that you can't take it all into consideration, because the very nature of asymmetric warfare is just that. You're not fighting an enemy face to face. You're fighting an enemy where they're not expecting it. So that said, I'm going to share an article with you now. Let me make sure it's the right one. Yeah, hang on. Yeah, so I'm going to share an article with you guys from the 9th of October, 2023. And I'm just going to give you the headlines and then we'll come on to the next one. So this was 9th of October, 2023. US, France, Germany, Italy, United Kingdom will help Israel defend itself. And this was a joint statement. And I'll put the links in the description below. It basically says that, I'll read it. The leaders of the United States, France, Germany, Italy, and Britain pledged in a joint statement Monday to support Israel in its efforts to defend itself. That's the statement there, guys. They will support Israel in its efforts to defend itself. But this was after the surprise attack by the militant group Hamas. So I'll put the link in the description and you guys can read that yourselves. Now, I'll just share another article, literally from, I think, yesterday. Macron says France stands by Lebanon and calls to de-escalate, doesn't mention Hezbollah. In a video to Lebanese people, French president says he has spoken with regional leaders, mentions grief for all civilian victims of the attacks in Lebanon. So what is it, guys? Like, what's the French, what's the French stance on this? Do they support Israel's right to defend themselves? Or are they supporting the Lebanese people? Like, I don't know. I don't even think the French know what they want. So the reason this is happening, and I've been saying this for months, it's this divergence between Europe, led by Great Britain, are going to have to fight the Russians in Eastern Europe or in Poland, wherever the chips fall at that time. And the United States will, with Israel, will be in a conflict in the Middle East. And be under no illusion, Trump, you know, my opinion, my speculation, guys, as are all of these videos, you know, Trump will have his invasion into Iran. It's, you know, the way, my perspective now, what I'm seeing, it's just an inevitability. But the reason Macron's had to come out and say this now is because they've got a really heavy Muslim population, as have the United Kingdom. And if countries like the United Kingdom and France are overtly supporting Israel in that region and are overtly, you know, helping with whatever Israel are doing in Lebanon, whatever Israel are doing in Gaza, then there's going to be, I mean, we've already seen it today in the United Kingdom. And I just did a video called Storm Clouds Gathering, where I talk about, you know, how the protests leading up to the anniversary of the 7th of October, how those protests in the United Kingdom are just they're going to fuel a lot of flames that are all, I mean, in the United Kingdom at the moment, it is just a hotbed of simmering tensions. And at some point, it's just going to go kaboom. But quickly back to France. So France are now, they have to come out and kind of condemn Israel, say that they're against it, support the Lebanese people, because this will calm things down on a domestic front. This will, you know, will mitigate protests. It will mitigate, you know, things that you've seen previously by the context of, you know, like, for example, in the United Kingdom, we had protests where things were getting burnt down, police cars were getting burnt, all sorts of wild stuff was happening. So this sort of stuff, you know, governments are trying to avoid that. So that's why governments with larger Muslim populations, governments that are in Europe, and because also they're going to be fighting the Russians, you know, they don't want to be associated with that other conflict. And people have learned these lessons from literally fighting the wars in Afghanistan. When Britain was fighting a war in America and the coalition and everybody else, when they were fighting wars, or they weren't called wars, were they? They were wars on terror. You know, when we're fighting these, what do we call them? When we're in these conflicts, you know, if you're fighting on two fronts, then you've got two sets of bad guys attacking you. So if you just divvy your numbers up and say, right, you guys deal with that, and then you're only going to get those guys attacking you, and we'll deal with this, and then we're only going to get these guys attacking us. So if you divide your forces in that context, you're going to get attacks from both countries. So the United Kingdom, you know, France, Europe, the Europeans, led by Great Britain, are going to be fighting the Russians in the Eastern Europe, whether that's Ukraine, Poland. I don't know where the chips are going to fall. That's why I always say in the United Kingdom, the biggest threat is from sabotage. So let's have a look what else has been happening then. So the French Navy, So the French Navy deploys near Lebanon as Israel launches ground raids on Hezbollah. So this was from the 1st of October. A French Navy ship departed from southeast France on Monday, heading towards the Lebanese coast as a precautionary measure to potentially evacuate French citizens. This as Israeli ground forces cross into southern Lebanon Tuesday to carry out targeted raids against Hezbollah positions. I think we was on a live stream when that happened. And can you remember what we said? You know, this is how all these conflicts start. They start with, what did we say? Limited military operation, special military operation, limited military incursion. You know, so this is how it starts. But look at how this is. So what? Hang on, let me just quickly. What was it called? Targeted raids. Yeah. So look how quickly those targeted raids have escalated to, you know, literal full-on assaults onto Beirut. So the situation in the Middle East, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And you're getting more people now, like I said at the beginning of the video, drawing lines in the sands to whereby you've had the Qatari Emir come out and say that they're standing with well, just hang on. What's happened? Hang on. Do I want to accept cookies? Right, I don't know what's happening here. So I'll just read it to you guys. No, hang on. That one. In fact, okay, that one. Yeah. Right. Qatari Emir pledges support for Lebanon under brutal attacks. Qatari's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, try saying that when you've had too many ports, expressed his full support for Lebanon Thursday and said he ordered that emergency aid be provided in the face of Israel's offensive against Hezbollah. I affirm the state of Qatar's full support for Lebanon and its brotherly people. Against the brutal attacks they are being subject to, the Emir said on social media platform X. Now, what I'll say about that is nobody was calling for a ceasefire when Hezbollah were firing rockets into Israel. And the problem here is the way Israel... The way Israel deal with things, it's a very draconian method of dealing with things, and but it's effective. It's absolutely devastating and it's horrific, and that it's got lots, and it's terrifying. But we're looking at things now with Western eyes. We don't live in that region of the world. We don't live under those conditions. So it's very easy, when you see these protesters in London with their, I'm sure I've seen like a protester with a Starbucks cup on an iPhone, and I'm thinking, have you ever left the United Kingdom? Do you actually know what these places in the world are like? Have you ever left anywhere apart from like London and that London metropolitan bubble? And when people say, "Oh, I've been to Dubai, I've been to so and so," and you think, I'm like, right, okay, that does not represent the Middle East, like London doesn't represent England. To fully understand these cultures and these people, you've got to live there. You've got to learn the language, you've got to learn the customs, the cultures, the people, what makes people happy, what makes people sad. And until you know that, you can't, and this is the problem at the moment. We're looking at, I always say this, we're looking at things with Western eyes. So the problems in the Middle East are going to get worse. There's no way back now. There really isn't any way back now. And what you'll see more and more countries, drawing these lines in the sand. Remember what the Qataris have said. Hang on, they've said they're asking for emergency aid to be provided. Well, can you remember when the Germans said that they were going to only supply Ukraine with helmets and body armor? Can you see what they're supplying them with now? So I think the whole situation in the Middle East, well, I don't think anybody thinks that it's not going to escalate into a full-scale regional war. And then that is going to inevitably drag the United States into that conflict. Remember, the United Kingdom, we're going to have our hands full with the Russians in Eastern Europe, whether that's in Ukraine, whether that's in Ukraine up to the Dnipro, whether that's in Ukraine up to Lviv, or, wherever those chips fall. United Kingdom is going to be focused in in Eastern Europe against the Russians, and the United States is going to be they're going to be fighting a war in the Middle East with the ultimate goal of a land invasion of Iran. This has to be done relatively quick, because when if Trump gets elected, which I personally don't see any way how he can't, but if Trump gets elected, then there's only the clock starts ticking right then, because he's only got 4 years in office. So they need to get 4 years to get that war up to scale, so they can't pull out of it. So whoever comes next, probably JD Vance, he's still elected, and then he's got another 4 years, and then he's got another 4 years after that. So we could be looking now at like 16 years of, Republicans in charge in the United States. Remember what I said, you need to be in a country for 40 years to be successful. So that's kind of the time frames we're looking at the moment. So we've got 16, we just need another, 34. Sorry, not 34. Go on, somebody do my maths for me, 24. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there, guys. I'm going to back to the grid. I'll, of course, put all these links in the description. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, Subscribe definitely if you've not done already. And I'm going to back to grid, guys, and I'll get you guys another video later.